Welcome to this GiftWorks video. My name is Jonathan Lehman, and this video is the first video in a 5-part video series on GiftWorks Volunteers. GiftWorks Volunteers is an additional add-in. It can be purchased, and it's available to work with any of the current versions of the GiftWorks fundraising software. Volunteers are the lifeblood of your organization, and I'm going to show you how GiftWorks Volunteers can help you drastically improve your volunteer relationships, acknowledging their importance to your organization. Some of the things we'll go over in this video series is I'm going to show you how GiftWorks Volunteers can let you easily manage the profiles of your available volunteers, basically identifying their skill sets and when they would be available to help your organization. Also show you how you can manage your job requirements, identifying the skills required for those jobs, and also when you would need those jobs filled. Also then show you how you can match up your available volunteers with the job requirements that you have. Show you how you can track the hours that your volunteers have worked. And then once you have a lot of that volunteer information captured, show you how you can use that to generate smart lists, how that volunteer information can be used within mailings, and the types of reports that are available to be generated based on your volunteer activity. Let's begin by signing into GiftWorks. If you've installed the Volunteers add-in, you will have an additional option on your toolbar called Volunteers. When I click on Volunteers, it takes you to the main landing page. From this landing page, you can initiate much of the activity that you would need to do to manage your volunteers and jobs. You have a Manage Volunteers link where you can manage your volunteers. You have a Manage Job link where you can add and remove and update the status of jobs. You have a match-up process where you can begin to match up your volunteers with your jobs. You can do assignment within that. You assign volunteers and jobs. And also where you can record the volunteer hours that your volunteers have worked. So this is sort of your starting point. I'm going to start by clicking on Manage Volunteers. This takes me to a page where it lists all the available volunteers that I have established so far. It lists the volunteers in alphabetical order. I can sort here by the different columns. It shows me the status, whether they're available or inactive. It tells me whether they've been screened or not, which we'll go through some of that information as we continue with this video series. I can click on any one of these volunteers and I get additional information over here. It shows me a lot of the information about their profile. Also shows me some of their history, how many hours they've worked, and so forth. I can filter this list by keying in part of the name. I can filter it by the manager. I can filter it by the status, whether they're available or not. So this gives me a place just to sort of review my complete list of available volunteers. Now, what is a volunteer profile? Well, a volunteer profile is really additional information that you specify about a donor. It's information specific to their volunteer status, the types of skills that they have, and when they would be available to volunteer. So to add a volunteer, it needs to be added to an existing donor within GiftWorks. So I'm going to start that process by clicking Add a Volunteer, and the first step in that process is I get a dialog box where it prompts me to enter part of a name. So I'm going to click the name Lehman, and I hit enter, and you see I find Jackie Lehman. That happens to be the donor I was looking for, and I'm interested in specifying adding a volunteer profile for Jackie Lehman. If I did a search and I did not find any donor, it wasn't the donor I wanted, I could click here and add a new donor. I could go through the process of adding a donor within GiftWorks, specifying as much information as I wanted to, name and address, and I could click next. But the point is that the volunteer profile is based on a donor. In this case, since Jackie is the donor I wanted, I can click next. If Jackie already had a volunteer profile, it would just take me to, it would give me the option just to go to the volunteer profile page and look at that information. In this case, Jackie does not. So it's taking me to the Create Volunteer Profile page. On this page, I have some information I can specify about them as a volunteer. First of all, it defaults to them being active. I can specify the manager, who would be in charge of this person. Say Gretchen would be the manager. I can put in any kind of additional notes that they gave me that may not apply to their availability or their skills, just something additional that they told me about that we would want to note and have recorded with them. Probably the two most important things are their volunteer availability and their volunteer skills. Availability is just basically setting up information about when they would be available to work. In our busy day and age, many people are prioritizing lots of activities, and they may have limited time frames of availability as when they can support your organization. So as specific as we can be here, it will help us in our matching process. I begin that by clicking Specify Availability. I can put in the starting date. They've said they're available starting today. If they've only given me a specific time frame and I know an end date, I can specify that. If not, I don't have to. And that's really all I would have to specify there for availability. But the more specific we can be here, the better. So if they've given me some specific time, that would be great. In this case, Jackie has. She said that she's available a couple mornings during the week. She's available for 4 hours per day. We could say it's just 4 hours per week within a certain time frame, but in this case, she's available 4 hours a day, and she can do that during the time frame in the mornings from 8 to 1 o'clock. But she can't do that every day of the week. She's only available, and she has mornings free on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we select those 2 days and click finish. But she said she's also available. Jackie's also available. We'll put the same start date in here. She's also available in the afternoon for about 4 hours a month. It's in the afternoon, so we'll say from lunchtime to 5 o'clock. So she can do that 4 hours a month. But she's only available on Wednesdays in the afternoon. But she can't do that every Wednesday. But about 4 hours a month, she could come in and give some time in the afternoon. So we're kind of building a profile of when Jackie's available. And the more specific we can be here again, the better that will help us during the matching process. The next section is to identify the skill sets that she said she can provide to our organization. GiftWorks comes with a whole list of predefined skills. I'm going to show you in the settings area, and as part of this video, how we can determine what subset of that predefined skill list we would actually have available here. But that is what that's showing here. We have different categories, and I can click on here and open up that list of categories, and a whole list of skills are there that I can check off. And Jackie has told me that she's available to provide some sort of administrative organizational support. So I'm going to open up that category, and she said, well, she's answered the phones before, so I'll click that. She's done some filing and clerical work. She's some data entry, word processing. So I've selected those. She's also told me, and I happen to know based on what I've set up here, that I've set up this category of miscellaneous additional skills. She's told me that she also has taken some Spanish, and she's aware that a lot of our clientele comes from a Spanish-speaking community, and sometimes it's helpful to have somebody who can speak in Spanish, maybe even do some translation. So she told us that she has some Spanish ability. We're going to make a note of that because that might come in handy. So once we have that information, specified everything we want to, we click Save, and now we have a volunteer profile established for Jackie. Brings us to the View Volunteer Profile page, and you can kind of see an overview of what we just entered there. If I click back, you'll see here now that Jackie Lehman shows up on my list and currently is a status of unscreened. And we'll go through that more when it gets to the actual process of assigning someone to a job, the process that you need to go through with a volunteer to make them available for a job. One of the things I wanted to show you in the settings area, I've referred to that as we were setting up the volunteer profile. So we'll go to Settings, we'll go to the Volunteers area here, we'll click More. And just similar to GiftWorks, there's different attribute tables that you can establish here, and then you can specify your own lists. So you can set up projects and so forth. The ones I'm going to talk to here with volunteers, you notice that you could assign a volunteer to a volunteer manager. So here you can actually define that list. Volunteer managers are also based on existing donors, but you can specify which of your existing donors are available to be volunteers, managers. So you can manage that list here. The one I want to go into a little more detail on here is modifying volunteer skills. As I said, GiftWorks comes with a predefined list of whole list of volunteers' skills, organized into categories. Many of them may not apply to your organization. I'll kind of just show you this list here. So you can choose to hide entire categories. So you can either show this category or hide this category. Even within one, you can either choose to hide certain skills that don't apply. So you can, with this predefined set that comes, which is basically from this administrative organizational support down to transportation, We'll review this later, this last one later, right after this. This whole set here is basically a predefined list that you can define which of these you want to display, which of these you want to show up when you set up volunteers or jobs. You have one additional category that you can customize. And when you customize it, you can basically give it its own name, whatever you want to call this category, and you can add whatever additional skills to this category that you would like that maybe aren't covered in the other ones the way you would need them to be. So this category is one that's completely customizable by you, where you can add additional skills. At this point, in this particular database, it's been identified as miscellaneous additional skills, and that's, for instance, where the Spanish language was set up, because that was important for this particular nonprofit. So I think that gives you an overview of what a volunteer profile is and how you would add a volunteer profile. We'll go over manage jobs in another video and continue with this series. Thank you for watching.